welcome you back to another episode of Third Phase of the Moon Radio. I'm your host, Dr. J, and we have an incredible show for you today. We have filmmaker and host of Buzzsaw, Sean Stone. Mr. Stone, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. You know, real quick, I'm going to bring in the founder of Third Phase of the Moon, Blake Cousins, to take honors of the first question. Blake, how are you today?
Doing pretty good, Dr. J, right here from the state of Hawaii, and welcome to the show, Sean Stone.
Well, thank you.
Hey, you've been looking for the truth. You've done these investigations. We've all seen you on TV. You got your new YouTube channel, radio show going. You're working really hard. I wanted to ask you, first of all, what made you, interested in the UFO, cover-up conspiracy, the whole gamut, the phenomenon? What got your interest, Sean?
Well, it's interesting because, historically, when I was, as far as my history, I was not particularly interested by the UFO phenomenon throughout my life. It's kind of been the last thing that has drawn my attention. Not to say that I discounted the issue of aliens or otherworldly presences or even military, military work with the UFO. It's just that it's always been kind of anecdotal, right? The issue of people seeing a UFO here or there. Having claims on whether or not it's aliens or military industrial complex. It just seems all very, anecdotal and not very fact-based. And so it was not a particular interest to me. Even though I'd read Jim Marr's book in my late teens, I guess I'd read Jim Marr's book and I thought that was very good on the not the Rule by Secrecy, but the one about the aliens. Just a kind of an encyclopedic take on it. So really it wasn't until I started dealing with the paranormal and having my own direct experiences with the supernatural and basically that journey, which began really with my film Greystone Park. That really was, for me, the time that I realized, okay, we live in an interdimensional universe. There's a lot going on here, and I think the craft that are being seen are not entirely physical. Oftentimes there's a spiritual domain that they seem to that interfaces with where they come from. They're jumping through portals, let's say, sometimes, or some kind of interdimensional, there's some kind of interdimensional activity that's taking place with these sightings. And so that, I think, was what kind of spurred my personal interest in it, as opposed to it being, I never had any experiences with aliens or whatnot when I was a kid, or sightings as a kid, so it was more from the personal experience later in my 20s.
You covered a lot of conspiracies in Buzzsaw, the TV, and, of course, conspiracy theory. What is the most startling conspiracy that you uncovered that you found to be true?
Well, I don't know if it's true, man. At the end of the day, I think the greatest conspiracy of all is the fact that we live within the Matrix. It's not exactly the way that they make it seem to be in the Matrix, although I'm really curious actually to read Sophia Stewart's original work, apparently that the Matrix is based on The Third Eye, her book. I'd like to see her take on it. But the Matrix is not exactly reality, but it's very close to, I think, what we have, which is some kind of hologram that we inhabit, and we're not really fully in control, that they're basically beings that are not of our worlds. They are like alien, some of which could be shapeshifters or whatnot, but they've been ruling us behind the scenes, but they're also able to work their way into and out of our reality. And the timeline, I think, as a whole, I think the whole issue of time travel, the natures of control, that's really, to me, the biggest question of conspiracy. So that, politically, I think we know that there's political conspiracy. We know that there's empires, financial conspiracies, controlling the debt, controlling the currencies, like all that, totally, believable and knowable. But when it comes to the actual metaphysical question, and it's also existential, of what we're doing here, how we got here, what is the soul that's in a body, who's, and how this is really actually a religious issue of why the religion came in the first place, because the teachers always came to tell us, look, there are beings that are not of the flesh, that are not of this world, that are controlling it. And you have to wake up and take control and possession of your soul. Otherwise, they will feed upon you, destroy you, basically take your soul, steal your soul. That's really the much bigger conspiracy that I think is the most fascinating to me.
What you're talking about, Sean, is basically such a mind-boggling subject matter. We really can almost comprehend, like you're saying, this matrix theory, that maybe what's going on in reality is that, like you're saying, this is all a hologram image, maybe a dream state, and basically we might have our brains in some kind of test tubes or in a laboratory at this moment in time, and all this is just basically, entertainment for us, this life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, really, what do we know about reality? It's definitely not. Oh, God. I mean, I would say from someone who's initiated to a certain level, like mystery schools, that the Masons, the Rosicrucians, the various secret orders, they talk about these things, but it's always done in a way that's that alludes to the reality, and it's very difficult to actually fully understand them until you, I think, reach a certain level of mastery over this game that we call life.
Several of the guests that we've had have alluded to this conspiracy, or I guess you could say the creation of humans actually being a combination of hybrid ETs that were basically a test tube farm for them. And Bob Lazar, one of the original whistleblowers who spoke about his time at S4, has kind of secluded himself now. But recently he said to another filmmaker, Jeremy Corbell, that he believes that we might just be a big video game for these ETs, exactly like the Matrix you're talking about. And so obviously this thought goes back 30 plus years. When did this first enter your mind?
When did this enter my mind?
Yes.
Oh, it's kind of like something that you come to step by step. I don't think there's any one moment that kind of, how do you say, that it really sinks in, and so you're just kind of there. But I would say it begins with certain understandings. You have to first understand that reincarnation is real. And our souls are at least eternal as far as we understand that word, eternal. That we're coming back into this world in different bodies, right? And that our origin is not of this world. And that came through certain visions, not drug-induced, just simple visions, at a young age. And then from the premise that your soul is here reincarnating from body to body, which, everyone from Jesus Christ, to many of the old mystery schools, to Buddha, all taught. From there, you start to go, okay, so then if the souls are reincarnating, who's controlling that process and why? Obviously, you have to ask yourself, why are we here? And again, most people don't want to deal with these larger issues of nature, human condition and what they're doing here. They just want to, get by and serve the worldly master. But if you look at even the Christian tradition, the Gnostic tradition, this whole idea that the world is controlled by Satan, right? That he's the real ruler of this reality, the demiurge that Plato talks about, right? The creator God. And you have to wonder, okay, so then if this system of control, it's, I think the Matrix totally made sense to me when I saw it. It wasn't like it was mind-boggling. It was just like, it was, I read Plato at that point, I understood it. And so when it's a system of control, this world is a system of control, it's been created from matter that's separated from spirit, and we know that we are truly spirit, then we have to understand that this is a game of some form. Whether or not we willfully chose it and forgot, for an experimental purpose, for a creative purpose. I can't tell. At the end of the day, that's a personal decision you have to make, and I don't want to tell people how to make it. But I don't believe that the world is evil in its essence. I believe it's more of a test and a challenge of creation, always guided by by God's will, even though it may seem that the devil and Satan and all these dark forces have it under their control, but even they are still serving a higher power, which is a higher consciousness that needs both dark and light to exist.
Apparently, yes, exactly. There's been scientists that state that, we've been having our brains switched off. Back when man was first created, by whom? We're not exactly sure. Is it God? Could they be aliens coming to re-engineer the Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon to, make human as we know it? That basically the brain is supposed to survive on its own for 3,000 years, but the problem is the body breaks down and there's an off switch. And why was the brain designed to live 3,000 years? I think that's because man has still not evolved yet, when we're only reaching a mere 100, 116 years at most on the record. There's other people out there that claim there are people that have lived up to maybe 500-600-year-old people that live on this planet right now, but we're not really aware of them. But you were alluding a little bit earlier in the show that you've had some paranormal experiences yourself. Could you go into some detail on that, Sean?
Yeah, just paranormal experiences, supernatural stuff. Frankly, the film that I made, called Greystone Park, is very much documented in the reality of the experiences. Beginning with things like when you see objects move by themselves, whether it's a door slamming by itself or objects flying. When you hear demonic sounds and screams in haunted places. I've gotten weird phone calls, from 666 numbers. I took one of them on Alex Jones, actually. We played it for him, for his people, the video of one of these calls that we got, which sounds like a ritual, like a little bit just one of these bizarre demonic sounding calls. It sounds like a ritual being performed on the other end. But, again, we're not quite sure if it's NSA fucking with you or if it's, is it NSA or is it supernatural? In those contexts, I don't know. But I do know that I've seen people get possessed, physically, like something possessed them, something possessed their spirit. They went, pretty nuts in certain cases, really, outrageously dangerous in their behavior. The list goes on really when it comes to the supernatural experiences. I think that a lot of it's in that film, and I made it based on what really happened. And then, I would say the other aspects in my life at the same time, it was like, I'd go into these hospitals, like these mental hospitals, and break in and go exploring, and you come home, and you start to feel like the shadows are following you. And I became much more sensitive to, like shadow, what are called shadow people, entities that don't have a body, they just have a shadow, as though they're projecting into our dimensions, from a different dimension. I've seen them float. Obviously, a lot of people have seen them. They start to influence your dreams. Became much more aware of astral travel and projection. Obviously, a lot of people, I think, successfully do that consciously. A lot of people just do it unconsciously. But this again deals with this whole realm that we call paranormal, supernatural. But it really, I think, has more to do with fourth dimensional physics. Fourth dimension and beyond of physics. When there's different domains that are influencing our 3D domain, and yet we just don't understand it. So at those moments when your spirit starts to open up and connect to those other dimensions, then you start to, those are the times in your life when, you literally, you have supernatural experiences, but that's why rituals are performed in magical ceremonies, and that's why certain phrases and words are spoken for ritual purposes, because it's all frequency and vibration, right? This whole reality is a vibration. It's a vibration of light, which can be basically sound and light. That's what we call it. The magic of our reality is that. It's predicated on sound and light, so we can also influence that, and that's why magic and rituals have always been performed. Hence the need for the secret societies to exist and keep doing their work, that also influences our domain. So, to put it in a simple sense, I would say the imagination is much more powerful and real than people can imagine. Whatever you think, whatever your consciousness projects, it has a big impact on reality, even if it doesn't seem it's having it at this very moment. We have to forget about our notion of time, because things don't necessarily manifest immediately, and yet they're always manifesting according to the needs of consciousness.
You know, a lot of people try to objectify aliens and look at it from a scientific point of view only, but it looks like from all the evidence, from all the researchers talking, it seems that there's a correlation between spirituality and science with regards to them. So if you look back in history, all these claims of fallen angels, demons, elves, trolls could be explained away as extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional beings. Even Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was project leader of Project Blue Book, came to the resolution that yes, we're being visited, but he doesn't think they're traveling from other stars, but more so that they're jumping from other dimensions. And this brings me to my next question. You did something big with Arthur Bigelow, or Bob Bigelow, and our good friend Dr. Roger Lear has a relation with him and keeps swearing by him not being involved in this sort of Illuminati. But you yourself had an experience on the Skinwalker Ranch, which is known for ET activity, but also has some poltergeist effects. Can you tell us what you felt there?
Skinwalker is a confusing place. You need to talk to Tyrell Ventura, my co-host on Conspiracy Theory and Buzzsaw. Have you guys had Tyrell on the show?
Not
Absolutely.
Yet.
Yeah, you should get Tyrell on the show because he's the one that really saw a UFO there, and he can describe it much better than I can. I would simply say this. Skinwalker is, as far as I can tell, it's completely haunted. You know, historically speaking, it's haunted. It has a long history, going back to the Native Americans, of whatever the Skinwalker is some kind of, alien demon thing, right? This is an old story. But when we went to check it out, we definitely felt, there was vibes there. When I hopped the fence and started to explore a little bit, I definitely got this feeling of something buzzing me or scanning me, and this electromagnetic kind of pulse in my leg that, I came back as a result. I said I'm not going to mess around in case there's any kind of weaponry here that we're not sure about. But then other people go explore and they say they don't have any experience at all. I know that Tyrell definitely saw a UFO craft appear right above us. And, he's a very skeptical guy. Tyrell's not someone who actually believed in UFOs before he went to Skinwalker. So when he said he saw this thing, and I could tell he was visibly shaken by it, I know that, that there are things going on there. And I can say from the interview with Bigelow, you saw on the Conspiracy Theory when I interviewed Bigelow, I literally asked him, I said, would you ever divulge the studies you guys have done? You have all these scientists that come to Skinwalker and they do their research, and they're obviously studying the UFO phenomenon. Would you ever divulge that to the public? And his answer being no indicates a lot about his character. I mean, I don't see why someone who's just personally interested in UFO, the science of unidentified flying objects and aliens and interdimensional existence, why would someone who's only interested from a personal point of view not want to divulge that to the public? Why would you want to hide that?
Wow, I think people in charge, the people with the power, want to hide all kinds of things, including that last episode on Conspiracy Theory that never made it to the major broadcast. What was up with that, Sean?
Yeah, there was an episode that was supposed to be about TSA, and honestly, it was never finished. It was not completed as far as we didn't shoot the whole episode because it was never approved by the True TV studio or the network.
What do you think they wanted? What were they afraid of? If they're afraid of anything, if there was a cover up on that?
Not so much that I don't know that it was just that they were afraid of anything. I think that they had really in the second season they crossed the line, as far as I understood it, with the martial law episode. And once they had done the martial law episode that confronted some politicians in Washington with this whole, issue of whether or not they had concentration camps in America, right, the FEMA camps, that really got some backlash from Washington to True TV. So by the third season, their whole emphasis was on the, not supernatural, but you'd call it like, really far out there, like the far out there conspiracies, the ones dealing with science that can't be proven yet, time travel and reptilians and Skinwalker, right? Those are not necessarily as threatening to the immediate political structure. And so when we want to do TSA, because TSA is clearly, it's basically, TSA is like most of the military intelligence complex. It's a way for private contractors to make a lot of money off of taxpayers' expense, right? And that's what the TSA was doing. For example, these stupid new scanners they have that they can, x-ray your whole body, right? And they put them in these airports costing billions of dollars, that we're paying for. And we were looking, for example, at the relationship of one of Dick Cheney's buddies, who's grown the company and is making all this profit, from selling these scanners. That's the kind of political shenanigans that affects money. And when it comes to that, then True TV, I think, freaked out because it's a network and they don't want to offend certain people in Washington. So I think that was the problem with the TSA episode.
When you hopped on to conspiracy theory, I know we only got a couple minutes till the first break, so if this carries over till after, did you realize that you're putting yourself on the radar of those in charge? If, for instance, more wiretaps or them paying closer attention to you now versus before?
Yeah, you've got like Darth Vader breathing down his neck after he did that, the TSA in the machine. Go ahead.
Darth Vader? I mean, I think if I was on the radar from the moment that I was born, I mean, maybe at the moment, but like, let's say from my childhood, when I'm obviously my father's son, and, my father's doing movies like JFK, I think that at that point, I was already on their radar. I think that really the government, the shadow government we're talking about, like, the powers that are eternal, not just the ones that get you elected every 4 years or 2 years. They were, obviously aware. I'm sure that, they were aware of it because they, it's part of all these projects, Mind Control, Monarch, MK Ultra, they Project Talent. I mean, they obviously are always looking at children, and that's why the whole university system is structured the way it is, where there's only a few Ivy League schools, right? And it's like you're trying to basically select people from the point of high school forward when they go to private boarding schools or get their private education. It's like you're already weeding them down and making sure you find the talent. And if they go to public schools, you can IQ tests or SAT scores to find who are the most intelligent, the most apt, and basically the potential leaders, revolutionaries, you name it. You're already analyzing these kids and assessing them from an early age. So if I wasn't on their radar from the point that I was a kid because of my father's track record, then I don't see how conspiracy theory was going to make me any more on their radar, especially having just gone to Iran a couple months before. Saying, that I have no problem with being government.
That is absolutely something we want to hear about your Iran trip when we come back. Everybody stay tuned. Third Phase of Moon Radio will be right back.
By popular demand, we are pleased to announce the Third Phase of Moon album is finally featured on iTunes. With all your favorite songs and themes you hear on the top UFO channel on YouTube, Third Phase of Moon. Out of This World soundtracks composed by master artist Paul Barrett. With 12 remastered and extended cuts to enjoy. Download them now, exclusive on iTunes. Click the link in the description below. Now listen for yourself, heard by millions around the world, Paul Barrett's album, Third Phase of Moon.